I got to shoot you straight. When someone's moving to Nashville and they tell me, hey, we can either build a house or buy a house, we don't really care. We want to look at all the options. One, I'm very happy for them. That's what they should do. But two, a little bit of me dies every time because it's such a complicated process. Today we're going to talk about, is it better to build a house or buy a house when you move to the Nashville, Tennessee area? If that's of interest to you, I suggest you stick around. See you on the other side. Moving to a new area is complicated. Moving to Nashville, moving to anywhere from anywhere, whether it's across town or across the country, is a complicated process because, knowing the nuances of neighborhoods and communities and schools and parks, the recreation, there's so many things to learn when you're looking at a new area. And that's what I do best. I love it when people are coming here to Nashville. That's what we're having so much in the last couple of years. So many people moving to our state. And I love it. I'm Susan Thetford with Nashville Redefined. And what we do on this show is talk about all things Nashville and the Middle Tennessee area to help people become acquainted with our area. I'm a native Nashvillian. I'm a long-term realtor of over 30-something years. I'm also a retired general contractor. So when I say I kind of cringe a little bit when someone talks about building their home when every single thing about the area is brand new to them, I cringe a little bit, simply because there's a lot of education to do, and I don't want anyone to feel as if I'm steering them, but I do want everyone to understand completely what I understand and the nuances and the difficulty of it. So let's talk about that. Today's show, we're talking about building versus buying in the Nashville community with today's market, which is 2021, and the supply side of both building and buying. Supply comes into both of those situations. So if you've watched this show for a while, you know that I am actually a retired general contractor. I have built, I don't even know how many, not any volume homes as far as, 20, 30, 40 a year, but usually 1 or 2 a year, staggered at times because the full concentration of doing the architectural design and plans, finding the lots, all those things I did, and I'm no longer a general contractor. I'm retired that license when, so many things happened, but I love it. I truly love it. I've built many homes for myself. I've renovated many homes, and I've built many custom homes. So I do understand this from a unique perspective, from the standpoint of development all the way through completion and moving in and having your first party. So I've actually taken quite a few notes for myself to not have this be a 45-minute long conversation, but I do want to identify some areas that might be of interest to come up with the right concept of what might be right, good fit for you. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the pros of buying an existing home. Pros of buying an existing home is it just going to take a lot less time to be able to move in. Construction here in the Nashville area, once you have blueprints, once you have drawings done, once you have found the lot that you're going to build on, once you've got your lending and your financing all in place, from scooping to starting to dig out foundation to completion for, say, a 3,500 square foot house could easily take a full year, could easily take longer than that. That's once you're ready for shovel. But the prior information, the prior things that you need to do up to that point could take, 6 months or so. So unless you come with a set of plans already that you love, unless we can find a lot that is perfect for that set of plans, doesn't need to be altered for construction plans, you can see how that can take a lot of time. Finding the perfect house for you and maybe doing some renovations to that home is far less time consuming than building a home. Number 2, buying a home is generally cheaper from a lending perspective than construction. So typically what happens is you have to purchase the land that you're going to build on and then possibly get a construction loan. Those are two different types of loans. Get a construction loan to purchase it. Then when you're finished, do a construction perm. So there are potentially 3 different sets of closing that you have to go to. And on the other end, you don't know what a 30-year mortgage is going to cost if it takes a year to a year and a half to build a home. So This is strictly talking if you're doing it custom. Now, if you're working with a volume builder, they're typically 6 to 8 months to build out, but not with recent supply chain issues. More issues. But anyway, in general, the pro of buying a home that's already constructed is the financing costs are going to be a lot less expensive. Number 3, and this is probably the most important thing, is that finding a community, I think, is the most important thing anybody can do. Finding a community and a neighborhood in a school district, if that's important, in the sporting things that you like to do, if that's important. Finding the community that you want to build in is the number one most important thing, I think, when someone's moving to a new area. Now, with that in mind, most of the places that people are liking the concept of are existing areas already. It already has the walking community, the walking trails, the close to the grocery stores. It's got those things already. Finding a lot that is available to build on in an already existing community is no, it's not. It's impossible. It doesn't exist. The only thing you can do in the Nashville area now is find an old 50s, 60s neighborhood and maybe tear down the home completely and build a new home on it if you like that neighborhood. Now, that's happening. That's happening a lot here. So actually all over the city, Williamson, Davidson County, even in Mount Juliet, the Wilson County area. People are loving an old, mature neighborhood. They like its location close to the city or the neighborhood or the school, and they are not liking the house. So tearing the house down for new construction, but that's talking the big bucks. So unless you're looking at owning about $1 million house at least when you're finished, that's out of the question. So buying a lot in an established community is really not an option. So pro of buying a home is that you can get the community, the neighborhood, the things that you want with mature landscaping, with maturity, and you know exactly what that neighborhood is going to look like when all said and done. Number 5, similar. You've got the mature landscaping when you're buying a home that's already existing. You've got the landscaping. You know what the neighborhood looks like. You know something about the neighbors to know whether they take care and maintain their properties. You have less questions as to what that neighborhood is going to look at if you buy a home that's in an established neighborhood. Number 6, you can always renovate, repaint, maybe open up some doors, make some new windows. You can always do some renovations and some changes to an existing home that you found in that neighborhood that you like so much with time, energy, of course, and some money. So maybe it's got the good bones. It's just not perfect for you as far as the house goes that you want, but over time, you can make it be what you want and you never have to move again. That, if the neighborhood and the community is super important to you, I think those are really key factors in being a pro to buying an existing home. Okay, so let's talk about some of the cons of buying an existing home. Right now, there's very little on the market. So it's going to take some time and effort in really looking and watching the market very carefully, being ready to jump immediately to go see that home or have someone FaceTime show you the home. As I do so many times, you immediately need to see everything that's available. There's very little on the market. The inventory is really, really tough, both in new construction and in existing homes. That's not different in most places of the country, I understand, and it's certainly no different here. You are potentially, number 2, could be into a bidding war. There's that potential because, you know, face it, everybody wants the perfect home, the perfect neighborhood, that price point. And the lower the price point here in the Nashville area, the more competition you're likely to have for that house. So we'll talk about strategies in another video. Actually, you can check this one out. We can talk about strategies to winning a bidding war. We can also talk about strategies of getting your home sold so that you come to Nashville in the best stead possible to be able to have your offer accepted. But a potential con for buying a home that's already built is that you may well be in a bidding war. Another con for buying an existing home is that you might have to make some compromises as to exactly what you want in floor plan, in room sizes, in paint, in windows. You may have to make some real compromises to get the location that you want, or in buying an older home that's already existing. But again, time, little energy, you can make some of those changes over time. Number 4, maintenance could be a potential problem with buying an existing home because, face it, if it's a 12-year-old home, then it's getting toward the end of the life of a typical heat and air system, which lasts 12 to 15 years. It could be getting toward the end of the life of its water heater. So it could be getting to the end of some of those systems' lives. So maintenance could be an issue, or not knowing what kind of maintenance that the current sellers have done to that house. If they haven't cleaned the filters, they haven't learned how to use their home well, then that home is going to age faster, kind of like you and me. Last, number 5 is, in all probability, depending on the age of the home, you may have some less energy efficient windows or less energy efficient appliances. If it's a 50s, 60s home, you may have some air penetration of the windows. I will say, though, older windows, well painted and maintained, are much better shape in some cases than some of the ones that are only about 8 to 10 years old because they're made with new wood. And I'm going to go off on a tangent, but there's a lot to it. There really is a lot to it. So an older home, you may think, I don't want an old home. It's not maintained well. It's not built well. There are many older 50s, 60s homes I'd rather have than some of the brand new builds. Just saying. So let's discuss some of the pros of building your new home. Well, first of all, you have total control. That is, okay, that's a lie. You don't have total control, but people want to think you do. You really don't have total control. The lot determines it. The contractors that you're able to get determines it. You don't have total control, but in essence, you get exactly the house that you want to build. You can draw it out the way you want. You can build it the way you want, exactly the way you want, assuming everything goes perfectly. And I'm going to go ahead and burst your bubble. It's not even on my list, but everything's not going to go perfectly. I think that one goes under the heading of stress, which is a little bit later. But ostensibly, number 1 pro of building is that you get exactly what you want. Number 2, you can customize things exactly the way you want. And this certainly is true. Now, when you're building with a volume builder, they're actually more like semi-custom because they will typically have 2 to 3 paint colors you can choose from, or you pay upgrades. They will typically have a palette of floorings that you can use, and most of them now are using some of the laminate flooring that looks like hardwoods. But if you want solid hardwood that's sand and finish in place, those are extra costs. You can customize all you want. It just depends on what your budget is. Number 3 pro of building your own home is, again, this is ostensibly true, but it's probably not going to be true, is no competing buyers. Now, again, if you're lucky enough to be able to find a lot to build on, then of course you found that lot, you own that lot, you don't have competing buyers. But if you're going into a volume builder situation, then what you've got is you don't know how many other people are competing to find that lot and build a particular home that they can build on that. There may be 5 or 6 other buyers, especially in today's market because there's very little inventory and there are very little building lots that are available as well. So ostensibly, you don't have competing buyers, but frankly, you will here in the Nashville area. Maybe not in your location. Tell me, where are you coming from? And is the housing inventory for existing homes or for new construction lots, is it as tight as it is for us? A pro of building your own home is that you don't have that maintenance. Of course, if you put in new appliances and new windows and new heat and air systems, then you're probably good to go for the next 12 to 15 years if you maintain them without having to repair them. But you are buying window treatments and probably furniture, and that money gets spent. It's just a fact of life. And the final pro of building your own home, just off the top of my head kind of list is you definitely getting the energy efficiency, the high efficiency units. As long as it's calibrated, your heat and air unit's going to be the high efficiency unit. You want to have it calibrated by an engineer to know that you don't over put in a system that's way too big. That also is not a good system. So there's a lot that goes into it. But those energy efficient thermopane windows ought to be in. You're getting a lot of energy efficient products that, an older home didn't have, and you may need to replace it. So now let's look at some of the cons of building your own custom home. Number one, your loan situation is in all probability much riskier unless you're paying cash. Then that's no problem. But it's riskier because if you take out a construction loan to build, or your builder is holding that loan and then you're going to take him out upon completion, you can't lock into today's historically low rates. You would have to wait until that construction is finished. It may be a year, it may be a year and a half. The builder doesn't have that real control over that. So if it takes 3 months to get in a heat and air system or the appliances because they're sitting on a boat off of the coast of California, it's not the builder's fault. And so losing an interest rate that's really good, you just got to know there's some things that you just do not know. You may have 6, 7, 8 months more of even renting, and the expensive renting if you build. Just things to think about. Number two potential con for building your own home is the unexpected costs. For example, if you spec'd out a home last August of what it was going to cost to build that home, and the builder started building it in December of this year because it took that long to get your plans approved and your financing in place, your builder suddenly had a 40% increase in the cost of his framing lumber, 25% increase in the cost of the copper wiring that goes into the house, which is in all the electrical. Those costs, he's not eating. You're going to eat them. So, there are going to be potentially lots of unexpected costs, including an extra 5 months on the rental place that you've got. So these are just all things to consider. Unexpected costs of new construction, even if it's simply overages, which is very easy to do. If you have a budget of $30 a lineal foot for your countertop surface, and you fall madly in love with one that's just so beautiful, and that one's $36 a lineal foot, that doesn't sound like it's much, but $6 a lineal foot for kitchen countertops, that if it's a good sized kitchen, that could easily be a couple $1,000s. You do that a few times, you go over on lighting budget, you go over on tile, it could happen, very easily happen, and those unexpected costs add up fast. Numbers 3 and 4 as to cons on potentially building a home is something I don't think people think about, which is stress. The time and effort and stress involved with building a home, if you don't love it, look, if you have trouble choosing paint colors from a fan book and it takes you a week, 2 weeks to figure that out, then building is not for you, because those decisions cannot wait. Decisions that can't be made pretty quickly on a very timely basis will slow the whole building process down for months and months and months, and you'll end up having your builder really go crazy and maybe even quit on you, because the stress involved, you've got to be able to make decisions, and those decisions have to be able to be made prior to you seeing what that full bathroom looks like and then deciding what to put the tile on the floor, because that tile may not even be gettable. So things have to be done on a very quick basis. Decisions have to be made months in advance as to when it's time to actually put it into the home. And that can be super stressful. I get it. I totally understand it. But that's something that people need to consider when it's time to build. And if you are coming from another area and you've got children to put into school and you've got communities to learn and you've got to find new doctors and find a dentist, you've got so many things to do. I just want to make sure I explain to people some of the stresses involved with doing that construction and that building and finding furniture, all the things that go into it. I just want to paint that picture pretty well. Still may be for you. And oh boy, is it fun if it is. A final con to my mind of building a new home is that you don't have the maturity of a landscaping. And one of the things that I love about a home is the big trees, the older neighborhoods with the trees that are established. And you can see what all the trees are like in your neighbors' yards and what people have done and how they've maintained it. The not having that maturity, and the other real problem that a lot of people have is they really want some instant green, instant maturity. And so what they do is they tend to put plant materials way too close together when they're landscaping. And of course, the roots don't have time to expand and to grow. And you'll find yourself a lot of things dying. You'll also find that most of the land now is very compacted because it's had the heavy machinery come across it. So it's really hard to get a good base for new landscaping. So the maturity or the inability to have mature landscaping and a maturity in a neighborhood, to my mind, is definitely something to think about when you're considering whether to buy or to build. One of the reasons that I hear people say that they really want to go ahead and build their own home is because they think it'll be less expensive to build than to buy. And in some cases, that's the truth, but in general, it's probably not. According to the National Home Builders Association, the average cost to build a home in 2019 was $114 a square foot. Now, that's way off, and that's an average house. And average to them is mostly carpeted, maybe a little bit of laminates. It's not what I'm finding people are coming here and wanting to build. You're not going to build for less than 150 a square foot here. And that's really not that's not a big bid. And the other part of that is finding a builder because that's just the way it is. If you're finding a custom builder, you're probably looking more like 200 a square foot because they just are so inundated and they can pick and choose their jobs. The other thing about that is that's hard dollars. That's not talking about the plans. That's not talking about construction plans and architectural plans. That's also not talking about all the things that need to be done potentially to get that lot ready for building on. That may or may not be putting in the driveway. It depends on if your driveway is 14 feet or if it's on a 3-acre lot and you've got hundreds of yards of drive. So the costs involved, when they say it was $114 a square foot back in 2019, there's no question that with the things that have gone on in today's economy, 150 a square foot is minimally what you're talking about. You're probably talking about closer to 200 a square foot. And remember, you don't own the land yet. So you have to buy the property that you're going to build that house on. So it's not an inexpensive process. It just isn't. So when coming to Nashville, you've also got to consider this. If you buy a volume builder's home, which is wonderful, they've ironed out a lot of the kinks. They've ironed out a lot of the things that we've talked about. So if you want to be in Thompson Station in Williamson County, then to find the lot that you want to build on is going to be owned by a particular builder. That builder can tell you what plan that he has already can go on that lot. So the first thing to do is really choose the house plan that you like in a neighborhood that you like, and then find which lot it could fit on that's not sold, and then work and negotiate with them, making all the selections. They typically are going to have selection process that you go through on a scheduled time frame. We can walk you through every step of that way, but that's not a custom home. That's really semi-custom. So there's a lot of things to it. Building or buying, I love the building process. I just want people to understand what that process means, what that process looks like, some of the ins and outs of it. If that's something you'd like to discuss more, please go ahead and reach out to me. I find nothing more fun than building. It's creative, it's wonderful, it's fun, but it is stressful. And if the fan deck of paint chips stresses you out, then let's find another way to find your perfect home here in the Nashville, Tennessee area. I'm Susan Thetford with Parks Properties. Check out some of these other videos, and I'll see you next week.